Every Thursday night for 14 months, Raymond Cole sat at his kitchen table in Decatur, Georgia, and wrote a letter to his son. He didn't mail them. Specialist First Class David Cole had been deployed to a forward operating base in eastern Afghanistan with communications blackouts that could last 3 weeks at a stretch. And Raymond had learned early that letters didn't always make it through on time. So he wrote them anyway and kept them in a manila envelope in the drawer under the silverware, and every Thursday he told David what had happened that week, who had called, what the neighbors were doing, how the tomatoes in the yard were coming in, whether the Falcons had any hope. He told David the ordinary things. He figured David had enough of the extraordinary. The day Raymond Cole walked onto the Family Feud stage in Atlanta, having been told his son was still deployed, having spoken to David on a static-filled call 11 days earlier, having no reason to believe anything was different, he did not know that his son had landed at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport 4 hours before the taping began. He did not know that David was standing in the corridor behind the studio door. He did not know that Steve Harvey had known since Tuesday. When that door opened and David Cole, still in uniform, walked onto the stage, Raymond Cole's legs gave out beneath him, and Steve Harvey caught him with both arms before he reached the floor. It was a Wednesday in October 2022, and Raymond Cole had come to Family Feud in Decatur because his daughter Keisha had applied 7 months ago and told him it would be fun. Raymond was 59 years old. He was a retired postal worker who had become, in retirement, the kind of man who was simply present, at church, at the community garden, at his grandchildren's events, at everything. Keisha had brought her husband Terrence, their daughter Amaya, who was 12, Raymond's sister Eunice, and Eunice's son Caleb. They wore matching navy shirts. Raymond had worn his proudly because Keisha had asked him to. He was nervous in the pleasant way that people are nervous before things they are excited about. He'd practiced Family Feud questions with Eunice for 2 months. He'd been sharp in the warm-up. He'd made the audience laugh twice before the game started. Steve Harvey had come out and worked the room and gotten to Raymond. He'd asked the standard questions. Where from? What did he do? What was his family like? Raymond had said, without being asked, that he had a son deployed in Afghanistan. He'd said it the way parents of deployed soldiers always say it. Factual, contained, with a particular flatness that is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of too much of it to show in a casual introduction. Steve had nodded. He'd said, "We appreciate his service." He'd moved on. What Raymond did not see was the look that passed between Steve and his stage producer, a brief, knowing look, the kind exchanged between people who are keeping a secret that is about to become something extraordinary. But nobody in that studio, except Steve and 2 producers and the security team, knew what was waiting behind the door at the back of the stage. Specialist First Class David Cole, 27 years old, had been in Afghanistan for 14 months. He had volunteered for a second tour because his unit needed experienced personnel, and because David was the kind of young man who, when his country asked something of him, considered it carefully and then said yes. He was 6 feet 2 inches tall. He had his father's eyes and his mother's stubbornness. His mother had passed 4 years ago, which had been the hardest thing Raymond had faced since, and which had made David, if possible, more deliberate about showing up for his father. The DoD liaison who had coordinated with Steve Harvey's production team described David's response when they'd asked if he wanted to come home as a surprise. He didn't hesitate. He said, "My dad is going to be on Family Feud? I've been waiting my whole life to see him embarrass himself on television. Get me on a plane." He had landed at Hartsfield-Jackson 4 hours before the taping. He had been in uniform since landing. He had been taken through a back entrance of the studio and kept in a green room 2 corridors away from his father for 3.5 hours. He had eaten a sandwich that a production assistant had brought him and watched the warm-up monitor feed with the sound off so he could see his father without his father seeing him. A producer had told him that watching the monitor was maybe not the best idea, that it might make the wait harder. David had said he'd been waiting 14 months. 3 hours was nothing. Raymond had played the first 2 rounds of Family Feud with full concentration. He was good, better than good, quick on the buzzer, good instincts for the survey answers. He made the audience laugh. He hugged Keisha after the second round. He looked alive in the way that people look alive when they are doing something they enjoy. And then Steve Harvey said, "Raymond, we're going to take a quick pause. I have something I want to show you." Raymond looked around. He was smiling because he expected a segment, a clip, a game element, something standard. He looked at Steve. "Keisha," Steve said to Raymond's daughter. "Did you know about this?" Keisha's face answered before she spoke. Raymond looked at his daughter. The smile went away. "Keisha," he said quietly, "what did you do?" Steve nodded to a crew member off stage. The door at the back of the studio opened. Specialist First Class David Cole walked through it in full uniform. Raymond Cole's legs gave out. Steve Harvey moved faster than a man in a custom suit should be able to move. He stepped forward and caught Raymond under both arms before Raymond's knees hit the stage. Raymond was not aware of any of this. He was not aware of the studio, or the cameras, or the 300 people who had gone completely, absolutely silent. He was aware only of his son walking toward him in a uniform he had not seen in 14 months, and his body simply stopped holding him up. Steve got him standing. Raymond turned toward David. David covered the distance between the door and his father in about 5 steps and had both arms around him before Raymond could say a single word. The studio fell apart. Not gradually. Immediately, every person in that room was standing within about 3 seconds. The competing family, the Robinson family from Birmingham, had crossed to the Coles side of the stage without being asked. The audience was not applauding in the organized way that audiences applaud. It was louder and messier than that. The sound of 300 people individually deciding that something larger than a game show was happening. Steve Harvey walked to the edge of the stage. His shoulders were moving. He stood with his back to the room for a moment, not performing, just needing a second, and then turned around. He pressed his handkerchief to his face. He stayed there. Amaya, Raymond's 12-year-old granddaughter, was the only person in the room who was completely quiet. She stood at the end of the family lineup and watched her grandfather hold her uncle with an expression on her face. That was not a child's expression. It was the expression of someone witnessing something she will remember for the rest of her life and already knows it. After Raymond and David separated, it took a while, Raymond grabbed David's face in both hands and looked at him. He was checking him. Any parent of a deployed soldier knows the check: eyes, face, posture, hands, looking for what came back and what didn't. "You're okay," Raymond said. It was not a question. It was a thing he was telling himself. "I'm good, Dad," David said. "I'm really good." Raymond Cole sat down on the stage floor, not caring about anything, and his son sat down with him, and they talked on the stage in front of 300 people and every camera in the room. The way fathers and sons talk when 14 months of Thursday letters has been the only substitute for a conversation. Steve Harvey knelt down beside them after a moment. "Let me tell you something," Steve said. He was talking to both of them. "I know something about showing up when someone needs you to show up. I know what it is to be gone for too long and then to come back and not know how to re-enter. I missed things during those years I was in the wilderness, years I was broke, on the road, out of contact. And the thing that saved me was people who kept the light on. people who kept writing. He looked at Raymond. "Your father wrote you every Thursday." David looked at his father. Raymond said, quietly, "They're in the drawer under the silverware." David pressed both hands over his eyes. Steve stood up. He was not done. He called his foundation's Veterans Transition Coordinator live on stage and committed to a full transition support package for David Cole as he re-entered civilian life: housing assistance, job placement counseling, mental health resources, connected to the strongest veterans support network in Georgia. He said it on air, clearly, in front of everyone. He also announced, with the Robinsons' full and immediate agreement, that both families were receiving the full prize package, because, as Steve put it, today every person in this room won something. Amaya, Raymond's 12-year-old granddaughter, raised her hand. Steve looked at her. "Can I say something?" she said. "Go ahead," Steve said. "I missed him too," she said simply. "I didn't know how much until right now." The room was so quiet, you could hear the lights. The episode aired 9 weeks after the taping, with David's full participation and consent, and a follow-up segment filmed at Raymond's home in Decatur, showing David reading the 14 months of Thursday letters at the kitchen table. The clip of Raymond's legs giving out and Steve catching him was viewed 275 million times in the first 3 weeks. The hashtag Thursday Letters trended globally for 7 days. The image of the manila envelope in the kitchen drawer became, for thousands of people, a symbol of the quiet faithfulness of waiting. 3 months after that Wednesday, David Cole began his transition out of active duty. He moved back to Decatur. He got a job with the city's Veteran Employment Program, eventually leading it. He reads the 14 months of Thursday letters periodically, in no particular order, one at a time. He told an interviewer, "My dad wrote about tomatoes and the Falcons and what the neighbors were up to. That was how he kept me here. He kept sending me ordinary life so I wouldn't forget what I was coming home to." A year after the taping, the Thursday Letters Veterans Fund was established, named for Raymond's ritual, dedicated to supporting communication programs for deployed service members and their families, including letter writing support, recording programs, and care package coordination. In its first year, the fund connected over 2,000 deployed service members with sustained family communication support. Today, Raymond Cole and David Cole have dinner every Thursday. Keisha and her family come. Eunice and Caleb come. Amaya sits at the same chair she's always sat in. After dinner, Raymond sometimes pulls out the manila envelope. David listens. They've gotten through about half of the 14 months. They don't rush. Steve Harvey, in a later interview, said, "I have surprised a lot of people on that stage. I have seen a lot of reunions. But I have never caught a father who was falling. And I will never forget what it felt like to hold him up just long enough for his son to get there." Some fathers write letters they can't send. Some sons carry them forward without knowing they exist. And sometimes, in a studio in Atlanta, on a Wednesday in October, the drawer opens and every letter is finally read. If this incredible story of a father and son moved you, subscribe to this channel and hit the like button. Share this with someone who believes that the ordinary things, the Thursday letters, the tomatoes, the Falcons, are how we hold each other across impossible distances. Have you ever been surprised by a reunion you didn't see coming? Share it in the comments. Because as Raymond and David proved, love is not the grand gesture. It's the letter written every Thursday to someone you can't reach, just to make sure they know you're still there.